All right, ladies and gentlemen, top of the morning to you there. So what we're looking at right now, you know what that thing is, don't you? It's got a 152 millimeter. This is the really speedy American KV2, but this is the M551 Sheridan. This thing looks pretty cool. This is, I would say, I'm more excited for this than even the Raketen Jagdpanzer because A, it's American and freedom is the only way. But in all seriousness, this thing's fast. It's got a main gun, and that's actually where the missile fires from, is from the 152 millimeter main gun. It's got a 50 cal on the top, and it fires ATGM. So this is the American ATGM launcher. Should be interesting because it's not necessarily a dedicated anti-tank guided missile platform like the Raketen Jagdpanzer or the IT-1. But you know what? And it begs the question, of the four nations that have ground forces, what is going to be the British one? Because we don't have French tanks yet. But anyway, let's get into this dev blog right here. And we'll talk a little bit in the end as to what we think the British anti-tank guided missile is going to be. So recently, Gaijin announced the first tanks in the game equipped with anti-tank guided missiles, the Soviet IT-1, the German Raketen Jagdpanzer I. Naturally, we can't discriminate countries without these vehicles. That would have a negative effect on game balance. Yep. So when the conversation turned to the United States of America, the most freest, right? We immediately thought of adding a tank that many players wanted for a long time, the M551 Sheridan, which can fire both standard shells and anti-tank guided missiles, which makes it unique from the other two. No tank is more strongly associated with the Vietnam War than the Sheridan. Designed as a vehicle for U.S. aerial landing troops of a new generation and tested in 1963, the Sheridan became a truly innovative tank. The M551's hull used aluminum armor. Its primary weapon was a 152 millimeter M81 cannon in addition to a launcher for anti-tank guided missiles. The tank was made as light as possible for aerial transportation and parachute landing, similar to maybe the ASU-85 and ASU-57s. The series production of the Sheridan continued from 1966, it's time to wake up, ladies and gentlemen, to 1970. But the tank saw use even later. The 152 millimeter M81 cannon can shoot anti-tank guided missiles in bold with an exclamation point. So, the Sheridan first saw battle in 1969, arriving in Vietnam at the very height of the conflict. The tank became indispensable to the United States, but just as it had advantages, so it had certain weaknesses. Like aluminum armor. The vehicle's low weight and ability to move through water with addition of a special flotation screen, which we won't have in game, so we won't see this thing swimming anytime soon, allowed it to achieve unusual mobility in the wet conditions of the Vietnamese jungle. But at the same time, the vehicle's armor was weak and its weaponry difficult to use and maintain. The recoil of the 152 millimeter cannon was so powerful that it sometimes injured the crew and, of course, negatively affected accuracy of aimed artillery fire. But on the whole, the Sheridan performed well and turned into a kind of symbol for the Vietnam War. In War Thunder, the Sheridan will be one of the most unusual high-ranked tanks in the United States arsenal of freedom. In comparison to the Soviet IT-1, which we spoke about previously, the M551 is far more lightly armored, but is armed with a flexible cannon launcher mount after researching a special modification for which the player gains access to anti-tank guided missiles. The ability to fire both artillery shells and anti-tank guided missiles compensates for many of this lightly armored tank's flaws. In spite of its highly accurate missile weaponry, the Sheridan will most likely perform best on small and medium maps, where it is easier to hide from enemy shells behind a hill or structure, and the ballistics and recoil of the 152 millimeter cannon won't ruin aim shots against distant opponents. But it looks like they used the main gun against a PT-76 in this little video preview, and it looks fairly accurate at point-blank range, where a little PT-76, the Soviet amphibious tank, can't repel firepower of this magnitude. This thing should be interesting. I think it'll be fun. I guess this is what you call the very definition of a glass cannon. This thing's got missiles and 152 millimeter heat shells. It's going to have pretty big ammunition, obviously, but the only unfortunate thing is that it doesn't have a separate and unique individual guided missile platform other than the barrels. So to switch between the shells and the missiles probably will take a considerable amount of time, especially considering that they're 152 millimeter shells and they're going to be rather big. So this begs the question. We've got the Soviet IT-1. We've got the German Raketenjagdpanzer II, and we've known we're going to have the M551 Sheridan for a while. We just didn't have the dev blog. But we did have pictures of it, and we've had those leaks for, I don't know, a week or two. But what is the British anti-tank guided missile vehicle going to be? Well, it's in armored warfare right now, and there is reasonably a lot of conversation going on. Like, is War Thunder trying to go and become armored warfare in a little bit? Like, is all the hype around that game kind of spreading? Is like all the fun and how they've changed artillery and using guided missiles as a weapon, is that kind of, leaking over into games like World of Tanks and War Thunder? And, that's a decent conversation, but that is a conversation for another day. The FV438 Swingfire, however, is likely to be the British Army's anti-tank guided missile vehicle that we're going to get in this patch. It looks pretty similar in concept to the Raketenjagdpanzer. And it's got a same kind of like combat mechanic that the IT-1 has, just a much less armored platform. It looks pretty interesting, and the Swingfire missile will probably be... Whoa, that's what happens when you wake up before your alarm and you only get 5 hours of sleep, but you can't sleep because there's missiles flying around your house. Just kidding. But what if there was? Maybe in my dream. But the FV438 Swingfire would be where my money is. And it's going to be cool because it has 2 launchers and 14 missiles, I believe. Yeah, 2 firing bins and could carry 14 missiles. So what it says about this on the wiki is it had 2 firing bins and could carry 14 missiles, which could be reloaded from inside of the vehicle, so probably similar to the Raketenjagdpanzer II. Instead of using the mounted guidance system, a control unit could be deployed, and the missiles aimed and fired from up to 100 meters away, allowing the vehicle to remain completely hidden from the enemy. The Swingfire missile was capable of making a 90-degree turn immediately after firing. So when it first came into use in the 1970s, the FV438s were operated by specialized anti-tank units of the British Infantry and Royal Armoured Corps. Many bags of tea also had to be carried within this, so that's why they were limited to 14 missiles, was because a considerable amount of tea was carried inside of these armored fighting vehicles. The role was transferred to Royal Artillery in the mid-1980s, and the FV438s were taken into service as guided weapon troops of armored regiments and 9 vehicles to a regiment. So the maximum armor on this thing is 12.7 millimeters. The main armament, 2 Swingfire anti-tank guided missile launchers, and each of them had a missile each, so that's 2, and then there was 12 more missiles stored internally along with the tea bags, which is a problem because if you ammo rack the tea, it really pisses the British crew off and they'll actually stop fighting. So it's effectively an ammo rack, so you got to keep that in mind. It's really kind of it's something that other vehicles don't have. Other vehicles don't have like massive stores of tea. And if they get tea-racked, or tea-bagged rather, the crew will stop fighting. So you have to account for that. It's serious. This is 100% serious. So the secondary armament is 7.62 millimeter machine guns, and there's smoke grenade dischargers, smoke grenade launchers. Now that brings up a question. How come we don't have smoke grenade launchers? There's plenty of World War II vehicles that had these on them, and it would be a very, very compelling and a very, very interesting mechanic to use in combat. Realistic battles, arcade battles, even arcade battles where like everyone's kind of thing. It could be like maybe a temporary blindness or, a temporary cover. Or, like that would be really cool. And in realistic battles, it would allow for charges, I think. For more dynamic gameplay, more aggressive gameplay, which, myself personally, being an aggressive tanker, would really, really enjoy. So what's kind of cool about the Swingfire was the Swingfire missiles were used in, I was about to say World War II. That's not even close. It was used in the war in Iraq, the first war in Iraq, and even the second war in Iraq. So, like, those things did work, man. Those destroyed. I think it was a T-55, but that was when it was the Swingfire missile on the Striker, which is cool. But the British used these anti-tank guided missiles till I think it was like 2005. But so that's my bet on what the British anti-tank guided missile is going to be, and it's kind of cool because we have this vehicle right now in Armored Warfare. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's just a little bit of a dev blog hype. We've got we have the Sheridan confirmed, and we're probably going to get the Swingfire for the British. There's no real news on French tanks. Has there ever been a dev blog on a Japanese vehicle? I want to know that. Actually, I think there was. Was it the Key 102 or the Key 44 with the 40 millimeters? I don't know. But anyway, so this is the Sheridan and some Swingfire hype talk. Stay tuned, guys, because I think patch 1.59 is on the horizon. See you soon.